Yeah,
Recording.
just do it.
All right, Łukasz. Great. So you're in Germany right now, right?
Actually, at the moment, I'm in Spain, in Madrid,
Oh,
but
conference?
I'm working in. No, I at the moment I'm going back and forth. So my family, we just moved to Spain,
Oh,
but I'm still working in Germany. So yeah, so I'm
yeah,
here and there.
yeah. Excellent. Yeah, we've got great progress on our side. We're starting the apprenticeship on September 1, and my question is,
Nice.
um, the model is every cohort that we invite to the program will be dedicated to
Mm,
a certain topic. Now, we're developing the enterprise on the building of the CDECO homes right now, but as soon as
hmm
the revenue model and operations are stable, we can move on to other things. And that's the kind of context. For example, if we want to get
mm,
into open source medical equipment, namely MRI
mm,
scanners, we can do something like, for
mm.
example, like get a dedicated cohort to it. I mean, depends how much interest there is, what people show up,
Yeah,
and but let's start right here because I mean, you're doing, in my view, one of the most important open source projects in the world. I mean, open source MRI. That's extremely interesting to a lot of people, and uh, personally, myself, my father just died from brain cancer like this year.
well,
So
I'm sorry for that.
yeah, and I'm thinking, wow, man, if we had an open source MRI, if you could have detected that, it might have been different. But yeah, but the benefit to
Yeah.
any kind of, for example, countries that do not have a medical system, they can leapfrog straight up with open, affordable equipment, and that's. I'm sure you think about that, but tell me how you think about it. What could be the use case for the when you imagine the endpoint of your
Mm.
work? What is your vision for this on the open source MRI?
Yeah, yeah. So how to summarize it? So basically, MRI is not the easiest target to go with an open source project. Completely agree. But the nice thing about it is that if we succeed with MRI, there's basically no argument saying that it's not possible with a different device in the clinic. So I still remember our first get together in Hamburg.
Yeah.
Where you gave a talk, and I think one of the comments from someone from the audience was, yeah, like this open source thingy, this maybe works for small components, uncomplicated stuff, but not for more complex things. And actually, I think this would really prove, or it proved already that that's maybe even more beneficial for more complex things, because even a single company, even the biggest one in the field of MRI, is not able to keep up. And they also admit openly that innovations are coming from outside industry. Most innovations in MRI coming from outside industry. So the question is, how can we make the best use of that? And in my opinion, that's of course by open source, but it's not only the innovation part. So I think with this MRI system that we are building, that's something that is still possible to do within a research environment. Of course, it's not like a high-end big field scanner which uses superconductors. It would be great to have such an open source system, because this is the workhorse in the clinic. So we're doing something smaller, which is still feasible within the research environment. Let's say to basically to kick it off. But what's interesting about it is the whole process and the whole infrastructure that we're building there, because it's not only the technology; it's really about how do we get these complex machines documented. How can we allow decentralized collaboration?
Mm-hmm.
How can we easily, or as easy as possible, we're still exploring that, transition these developments into products? And also, there comes the whole certification aspect to it. These are all fields which is at the moment, which are all black boxes. So independent of the technology, I mean, there are no blueprints for anything really. No, so but once you create that, that's a huge potential, because you have You have many systems globally which are not regulated at all. In the US, you have FDA. In Europe, you have MDR. I mean, in the end, you have still the same devices, right? Same standards you follow in a way. So there is a way also through this open source technologies to harmonize, to improve the whole process of how to assess safety of medical devices, etc. And of course, one of the most important things is how do we actually get these devices for people that have practically no access to them. And and it's not enough to build a device and put it in their clinic, because they need information. Otherwise, they cannot operate it. They need information, they need maintenance, so they need to build up local infrastructure. Otherwise, and this is what we see with the whole donation system of medical devices, doesn't work. It's a waste of resources, basically, in many cases, or in most cases. So this is something that through an example of MRI, or we call this then from our ecosystem of open source imaging, basically. So we start with imaging technologies. It's a very similar risk category. So also from the certification perspective and from many things, you can basically, you have some common ground, and then you could expand. So if it works with that, why not with ultrasound? Why not with CT? Why not with other of course, imaging methodologies, but of course you could, in principle, expand it to other technologies as well. So, yeah, so that's in short, huge potential, and also another argument why going for an MRI system. Just a second, I'm a bit.
Can you move your camera, by the way, so you're like almost pointed towards the sun? Can you move it so you don't?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
wait, can you?
Okay, that's better.
Is that better?
That's better.
Yeah, sorry, I just found a table here, so I have to use what I get.
Better.
No, so maybe another point about why MRI and why going for medical healthcare with an open source vision, because I love your idea of the 50 machines, or like a certain set of machines to have. And I think with every open source project, and I observed this for a couple of years, the challenging part is always when it comes to scaling it to business, to funders. Everyone has the same problem. So like great inventions, cheap or much cheaper things, but in the end, it doesn't scale. There are a few doing it, but it's really difficult to justify a business case. And in terms of medical technologies, I would say where we have like all these resources in public healthcare systems, which are in principle huge, and they are not run very efficiently. So you have devices that exist for many years, many patents run out. The devices are not becoming cheaper with time. No? So there are many things that you could do more efficiently to basically save money for the healthcare system, and by investing into open source technologies. So this could be a real lever that we would have to basically get some real funding and real resources, and through that set up the whole infrastructure also for other fields in open source hardware, like to pave the ground. No? So there you really have a strong argument, because it's not only one healthcare system, there are many healthcare systems across the globe. So there are a lot of, in principle, a lot of common resources. And this is something similar that's happening, at least in I don't know, I think in the US as well, but in Europe there was in funding, and open science funding, right? So you had a push towards open access. So basically, when you want to publish your stuff, it always has to be open access. At least now there is a push for open source software through other reasons as well. So through all these public funding mechanisms, it might work. And of course, the healthcare system is it will be huge.
Okay.
So but first we need examples to show, hey, that really works. We have this ecosystem of open research, open source bases, We have products based on that, so that really reaches the patient, so it doesn't stay only in the research domain. Um, and then and then we have founded also the nonprofit that tries to keep this community a bit together and synchronized. That was important to basically define what we mean with open source. So we're going with in this direction with the nonprofit to basically have the same level of documentation through these different projects. And then it might work, and then maybe we could do the next step of going to stakeholders and policymakers and trying to think about how could we do it more efficiently. And if it works with the small MRI, we could scale it up to a big MRI, for example, etc. But this needs then heavy investment by industry, which already is not so easy to get it done without any investment, to be honest, to transition this into the clinic. So this is where we are at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it's the enterprise aspect that's the killer, of course. But tell me,
Yeah.
why do you say, okay, they're scaling to the enterprise level? My strategy on that would be develop from within, not from the outside. Now, of course, allied collaborators who truly get the open source nature definitely work. But at that point, you have to be very careful about culture for whoever's going to be coming into that program and then hijack the thing and make it proprietary or whatever, or fake open source or whatever. I mean, have you seen any such dynamic already in what you're doing?
I mean, let's call it this way. There are always bumps in the road, okay, and there are always people. I mean, to me, in the end, and even if it's the altruistic visions, in the end, it boils down to human ego, and it's everywhere. So it's of course there are people trying to misuse things for their own interest and don't see really the big picture, and that's constantly there, and it's constantly the problem. And of course, you have to be careful about that. But nevertheless, I wouldn't say it stops the movement. It's just
No, it doesn't
breaks it
stop
up.
it, but it's a
Yeah,
bump. So
this yeah, and it's difficult because I mean we again we're all trying to somehow be creative with the resources we have. You know, so that's um, you not you not always can choose the idealistic path, let's say. So there are some compromises. It still brings you forward. It's not like the 100% way how you would do it, but you can progress. No, so that's how I see it. But it's not nothing that's at the moment where I would say, okay, that's really killing it. Because again, even if there would be people trying to prevent it, it's a matter of time. No, it's again a matter of time till each patent has a certain duration, till it runs out. There are so many other different options how to do things.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
When
so yeah.
when you say bumps in the road, so you're saying definitely there are bumps in the road that are cultural bumps, not just other stuff, but specifically open culture bumps.
Uh, this, for example, but there are also um, let's say more difficult situations with contracts, etc. So some legal things, no, where um, so maybe just to give an example. I mean,
Give me a contract
I'm
example and a legal
yeah.
example.
So for example, I mean, I'm working at an institution, right? So I do have a contract as an employee at the institution, which also specifies the IP situation, right? So
Yeah.
if I do an invention, I do need to, normally I do need to file a patent, or it needs to be checked. Is it valuable for the institution to be licensed, etc.? I know the process of patents, and you probably as well, and that's why we are so frustrated about this system that it doesn't work. Um, So I, of course, I try to avoid it. But this is, for example, one thing. So if I do have a
Yeah.
project, which I need to get grant money for it, and I need to specify in the grant, and this is how at the moment it works, and this is something that I can only suggest to others that really want to go the open source way, is to write in your grant proposal already that you will be licensing it with an open source license, which one, and then this were the efforts that we did a little bit in this direction of this standardization process of open source hardware, this DIN-spec stuff. Basically, just write it all in the contract, because then it's clear. Then it's signed by everyone, because everyone, of course, wants to do the project. But then it's clear. Then basically the results from this project, I can publish it open source without asking someone specifically to assess it before, to have a complicated process, etc. So, for example, this made life much easier. Yeah. We're also at the stage now which it made much easier because of liability and stuff. So in the beginning, I also had to check things for that. So this is also much more relaxed now, I would say. So the hurdles become lower. Yeah. But yeah, it's a process to go through it. So
But why is it a process? You just write one line in your contract, in your proposal. Why is it a big deal?
yeah, but you need to know that. Yeah. You
Do
need
you
to
know
know
it?
that now I know it. So now I'm doing that. Now I'm doing that constantly. Yeah. But yeah. And for example, now when you want to transition this into a product, that's the next challenge, because so there are also grants that give you because I mean there are two ways. One, you find an investor and then you give basically away your open source idea. Um, or you try to go something in between, that you get some grant money first to do the transition, which you give away less. But even there, they will ask for an IP strategy. And for example, there some of the comments are, and it's from different people, so it's not only a single person, but from different people, is basically, okay, if you don't have any patents, then you don't need to apply. No? So of course you can combine patents with open source licenses, but again, no, if you're an employee, you're working for an institution, so you file the patent, which belongs to the institution, it doesn't belong to you.
All
Yeah,
right. Well, how
and
retarded can you get? Whatever. It's like, okay, no, we don't play that. So,
yeah, yeah,
what you're
yeah.
asking for at the end of the day, you're gonna raise costs due to competitive waste, and we're not achieving our mission. So we need to be very clear about it, and let's find ways to do it
Mm,
where
mm,
this is not an issue. So,
yeah.
so don't even go there, and talk to me before you do. But let's talk about real
I mean,
ways of.
I mean, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I mean, the thing is that there are ways, no, because again, patents are stupid. No, most patents, more probably maybe 1% make sense, but
Tell me
um,
about the 1% that makes sense. Where does it make sense?
yeah, not really, but from some of the argumentations. But let's say most patents are more like a show off for investment. So if you have an open source core and you do some patent around it, that's not really critical,
Oh,
and
okay.
it helps you to go forwards thinking about it at the moment, to be honest. Yeah, because if you see other ways, I'm happy to do so. But I was trying. I was talking to a lot of people already. If there is a different way,
All right.
would be great. Yeah, we'll try
Okay.
to avoid it. Yeah.
So in this work, what
Mm.
are the budgets, the development budgets, and but before we go there,
Yeah. Mm.
scaling to enterprise.
Mm.
What's your opinion on? Okay, so the core of scaling to enterprise is you saying we've got the chicken and egg problem to get product is expensive,
Mm.
and that's the only problem. Is there any other problem beside
Technolo- yeah.
to the
Technologically, there
possibility?
is. Yeah.
Sorry, to the possibility
Yeah.
of developing in house. Now it's going to take time and resources, so you either have
Yeah.
to have money and direct heavyweight product management, or you can have a more loose effort. It's going to take forever and so forth. But is there anything a priori that prevents an organic process from succeeding? Like, is there anything I'm missing here? I understand it's, you might never get there because you never organize the resources. But anything else that you want to bring up that's particularly different than maybe what I'm dealing with?
Yeah, because I'm seeing it from the institutional perspective, which of course has their own dynamics. No, so and each institution is a little bit different, but the question, there's no technological problem. This will all be solved. I don't see an issue there. The certification stuff will be eventually solved. No, so it's all a matter of resources. There's a need for it. No, there are use cases for it. That's also not a problem. No, so the problem is how to get these resources to scale it. From the institutional perspective, I cannot build a medical device in-house. Because this would require certification. This will be a nightmare, and I don't think it will be politically wanted internally. No, so these projects, no, you get some grants in. As long as you get some grants in, it's okay. But even there, they maybe want to tackle different topics. No, so at some point you need to have some exit in a way. No. So it only goes, probably only goes outside of our current institution or whoever does it. But I don't see at the moment. There are some people that are using some of these technologies, but I'm not sure if this will come back to the open source idea. So I've seen this already a couple of times, where from an open source community and then it's a closed product.
What community example? Give us an example of the scoundrels.
Yeah, it's I mean, I love the founders. I do think they are great and they have an open source heart. I don't know if it will ever be an open source medical product, or at least to a large extent. This, for example, the Open example, no, the ultrasound.
I was going to ask you about the ultrasound project.
Yeah, no. So I do hope that. Yeah, I do hope that they will find a way back, but I'm not sure, and there are other examples that I'm not sure how it will evolve. No, so that's why one of the ideas is to think of to go in there to basically learn the game, and then find a way how to make it work with the vision still intact. So and they're coming to the part of the resources. No, so just the material costs for one scanner are around, let's say, 50K. No, I need some additional measurement devices around it.
For your small MRI.
Yes, for the clinical one. For the clinical one,
mechanical one.
For the so if you want to do like a clinical one out of it, let's say the material cost. I mean, it's not cost optimized, of course, but let's say around 50K. No, then you need, of course, developers on hardware software side. You need certification. Certification is extremely expensive. So normally, if you go through the normal regulatory bodies, we do have some good contacts because we do have them in the project. So we are actually creating documentation blueprints that we will also release. So that's above the technology. We will also release some documentation blueprints. So there's already some prior knowledge, but just the standard testing, for example, and it's just the safety testing. It's not even on CE mark testing. This is, for example, 50K. If you want to do some clinical studies, you need to always involve medical people. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money. So So basically, these are costs that all sum up. And basically, if you would want to kind of scale it to get this clinical certification in Europe, of course, you had the idea already, which we also this is a viable idea. We also discussed that you go outside first. You don't go right away for FDA or MDR. You can go to other places. You can also go have a strategy of putting a system into the clinic without MDR certification, just to get some in vivo data. You can go over having a product for research institutions, of course. So there are a couple of ways know how to do it. For me, it would be great to really target the clinic right away. I don't think it's like huge cost that you would need, but let's say to do it to start comfortably would be probably some, I don't know, probably around 5 million or maybe a bit less, but um, something in this range.
5 million for clinical
Uh,
trials.
to basically for everything to finish the product development plus the clinical trials. Um,
You mentioned 50K in hardware, plus developers and software, plus 50K in clinical studies. That would be, so one product, one iteration would be like 100K just in those costs plus development time.
um, probably a bit more. So this the test I was talking about. This is really just two parts. So there's this medical device standard 66011. This is just the safety part for the hardware itself. And then you have the 66012 233, which is MR specific. But probably the software part will be actually more difficult. So if you really want to have something, so for example, you have a target clinical application, of course, it needs to be robust. Um, um, uh, so this will take a little bit more effort to get it to this point. I mean, we'll get there. It's just a matter of time. But and then depends how many. Yeah, depends on the clinical target. How much this will then cost and how much time this will take. No, and this is all you basically. Before not getting that, it's of course difficult to sell devices or not on this market that you're targeting. So,
Use case for the
but I,
small
yeah,
small devices, the one you have
mm,
right now. There is a use
yeah,
case in the clinical market for that. For example, for plain just the brain scan.
yeah. So, for example, one clinical target would be stroke. Yeah. Um,
Stroke is a blood clot in the brain.
yeah, there are different, basically distinguishing between um, different events. For that, you don't need to have um, a high-end scanner, and of course, the advantage is if you can push the scanner to the patient. So typically, you have a small time window, so that's interesting because especially when you're in remote regions, the time window is in the range of 5 hours, let's say. Um, so this would help, but it can also help when you have it in a hospital because typically when you have it's complicated to transport stroke patients to the MR scanner. You always so it's more like you save costs in a hospital because typically it needs to be accompanied by a medical doctor, and that's costly, and that's of course risky for the patient. So having a quick scan to see, okay, how does it develop, or maybe there's a follow-up risk a risk for a follow-up stroke or stuff like that. So stroke, for example, is an interesting case, and there's a company on the market which is called Hyperfine. So you can also check some papers from them. Um, and their devices, I think they're selling it just to get some idea of because it's very similar from the technology. I mean, from the physics, you assuming that we can do what they can do, you get the same image quality because it's very similar. and their initial price is, I think, 450K or so at the moment. And then the very expensive part in medical devices is always the service contract, right? Which is typically at around 10% per year from this. Or sometimes more, depends. But then again, so you sum it up over 10 years, that's some typical periods of this device. So you have 900K. And I think with this small MRI that we're doing, the target would be, I don't know if initially, of course, might be a bit more expensive probably, but if we can get it below 100K, but 100K lifetime, that would be really cool, because then you can put it in a lot of different places, and it would get interesting for different places. No, I think 500,000 is always a little bit, still quite a bit. And for this, I could already get a refurbished system like a normal MR scanner, or pay a little bit more to get something more powerful. So you have certain applications which, of course, interesting still to have this low field system. But yeah, but if we get it under 100K, I mean, that would, of course, change many things.
66011, how much does it cost to go through that?
Yeah, this number that I got. I'm still getting in some other. This was one number I got, but I know that some others will be a bit cheaper, so I'm waiting for that. It's probably around this 50K just to get this one, the testing on this one checked, just for the main hardware. And again, I mean, one of my other parts in research outside of this low fit stuff is actually MR safety. So the small system makes a lot of things much easier and safety wise. No, so many things are really. I don't want to say not to worry about, but actually you don't need to worry about as much as in this high field systems. No, so both from the magnetic field, from the RF power deposition, from the gradients, acoustic noise. There's so many things that are much easier, which makes it pretty cool. And also, but of course, you need to make your homework, and you cannot have any obvious threats. And this, yeah.
For the 6601233, that's a CE standard? Like
that's an IEC. Yeah.
IEC?
Yeah.
And how much does it cost to go through that process? And how is that done? You take your machine to their labs?
Yeah. So these are basically these two standards. Basically, this would be like the basic safety. So the 233 in the end, this is like the very specific MR standard to follow. And then the 6601, this is like the main, the basic. I don't know. For example, that no electric safety, or when you disinfect certain surfaces that might be in contact with patients, that of course they don't leak into the housing. So these are like the basic standards, and the 233 is more the MR specific one, which that includes the RF power deposition, acoustic noise, magnetic field strength, some specific things with that. No, yeah. So these are, but the two together would be around this 50, just for the testing, but not to get the CE mark, of course. This is because for the CE mark, you need at least in Europe, you need to. This is what we cannot do at the moment. You just need a QM system.
What's QM?
You need a quality management system.
Okay.
A way to track basically track your quality, and then there is also some post-market surveillance and stuff, which of course doesn't work, doesn't apply. But basically, what we will go for in the next step is from the research project, we will want to do this basic test based on 6601. and 233 also released that to the public, and then people could in principle, and then in the next step we would then go, you can go with that without saying that of course it's a medical device, but then at least you can go with that. If you do this, you can go with this to your local ethics committee if you want to get in vivo data, no, because that's the next thing, so that you can basically are able to scan in vivo, and then yeah, we can start collecting in vivo data from the different scanners that are being built worldwide, um, creating open image databases, use them for deep learning and stuff. No, so there's a lot of this will be already very helpful. Yeah.
When you had this sample scans that you've done already, did you do that in vivo?
We did some in vivo, but not at our institution, because at our institution we cannot do that. So we had some components that we use on a different system, and there we acquired some in vivo scans that are something that we believe that this we can also do that with our system at some point, but we cannot do it officially yet because these are our internal regulations also.
How did you do
So
that
we need,
with? So you gave them a copy of your machine to use, or how did you do it?
no, they are very similar machines. No, so they are different based on an open source core, but some components are a little bit different. So we would need to go into specifics, but basically there we could do the in vivo scans.
So they had another version of your machine. They were a collaborator with a different
Yeah, so
iteration of the machine.
they started with a version, and we have one version that is very similar to theirs, and we have let's say two others that are there are some other developments around it. No, so this is all like it's a big community, which is quite nice, going into very similar directions, and trying to
So in a community, you've
make
got four machines
what
built
makes it.
already. Is that the case?
Sorry.
In a machine, in a community, you already have 4 iterations built.
So we have different versions, and there are different machines built, but they are not all on the same, let's say, a quality level. So some are a bit behind, but they are already, so depending on the parts, so there are already a couple of sites that have a system which can do imaging, but you still need to do a little bit more to, let's say, to get proper imaging. No?
So there's 4. Is there more?
It always continue. Yeah. Sorry.
Is there 4, or is there way more than 4?
Let me think. So there's.
Is there a map online somewhere? You got that on your site or no?
Yeah. I had them. I had a map in my presentation, but not online. I think I have to look it up and then actually make a map based on the progress. Like how much do you have? Like what percentage?
Yeah.
But this would be actually quite nice. Yeah. Yeah, but it's it all takes, like, as you know yourself, it all takes so much time to do all these little things. But this map would be useful, and I agree. I agree.
Well, Revolution is a full-time job, but beyond that,
Yes.
each of these guys are spending. Oh, tell me about the BOM cost. Out of the 50K, what is the most expensive line item?
I would guess maybe not anymore. The magnet is definitely something. So depends if you get parts fabricated in-house. That's of course cheaper. Then you only need material. If you have your CNC, for example, which is not too expensive.
To make
And
the shape for the winding, to make the core.
No. So the magnets are permanent magnets. So you use a lot of small permanent magnets. Yeah, and so just the permanent magnets, they would cost. This is like a field that's very the prices for rare earths is always going like. So I think we paid around 4 or 5,000 just for the magnets, and then for the rings or the remaining material to put the magnets, that's probably another 5K.
The
something
rings
like that.
have to be machined precisely.
Yes. I mean, precisely, defined precisely, but I would say,
1 millimeter.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The resolution
And
you're
there we
aiming.
had, very different experiences because we had in-house builds. We did it to an external company. We bought our own CNC to do it ourselves, and all of them had their failures and um, and experience and learnings. So yeah, but this let's say the magnets, when you are with the magnet around 10K, the grading coils are cheap. It's mostly time. The
What
RF
are
coils are the gradient coils.
gradient
There's
coils?
like
Okay.
uh, the amplifiers. This is something. Um, so we would like to have more power, and there's no open source design. So this would be like if I would choose like, okay, what's the next open source design that we would need for the system? I would say that's a powerful gradient amplifier. So that's something that if you buy it. And if you again shoot for the clinical case, then you have cost of around 25K for the gradient amplifiers because you need three of them. So not 3 times 25, but in total 25. One of them is 7 or so.
What are the specs of the
Um,
amp? What are the
um,
specs?
well, you need to run like let's say 50 amps, 50 amps, and then high enough voltage. Um, but we haven't tested like what would be the minimum specs. No, so this is something to still test, and this depends on the clinical application because with the small ones, you can also go ahead with the small ones. So the ones we have are 15 amps. That's an open source design. That's quite nice. Um,
You guys created that design?
this design is from the TU Delft.
TU Delft. Okay.
That's not ours. We are just modifying some little parts of it at the moment. Um, but the core design is TU Delft.
And
Um,
it's CERN compliant.
uh, this one would probably not yet. Would need probably a little bit of work to get it through CE. Yeah.
No, I'm saying
Or
CERN OHL. CERN OHL.
I have to check actually which license this is. I think it's Thurn OHL. Yeah.
It's what?
Yeah. I think it's Thurn OHL. I don't know which version. I would need to check. Yeah.
Uh-huh. What's a challenge for scaling from 15 to 50? This you're just redesigning that with different components. Can you take the same design and modify it for different higher power components, or it's not that easy?
No, it's apparently not that easy. Because there are some you need to have some proper thermal management. There are some um, um, feedback loops. So it's not. I'm not too deep into amplifier design, but apparently it's not that easy to. We haven't targeted yet because it's we want to get a working system first, and then at some point you can exchange it if needed.
Mm-hmm.
Or I hope that in the meanwhile someone else comes up and
Did you, for the 15 amp design, did you build that in house?
no, the 15 amp, this is we bought it.
How
So we
much
have
was that?
this is a commercial part. So this is a proprietary and standard component. So the 15 amps, again, this is the open source part that we have from this is this TUDEV design. And the other one is that we are testing is just a standard off the shelf component. Yeah. So you can of course use some of them, and it's easier for certification to do that initially. Yeah, that's another thing. No, so At some point, you can exchange it with open source parts when the open source parts are ready, also to go through the certification process.
When you had the 15 amp design from TU Delft, you bought it from them?
This one we bought. We made them assemble one for us to save time. And we had another one assembled within the project that we're working on. That was assembled within the project. But this was assembled by a partner from us from Turkey. But and this one is the one that we probably still do little modifications on.
For the 15 amp design from TU Delft, how much did that end up costing you for your machine?
This was around 8K.
Okay, so I'm counting 10 plus 8 so far. Where's the rest of the 50K? So the magnets, the rings.
Yeah, 10 plus 8.
10 plus
let's say when you calculate like that. So I have to just say I have a follow-up meeting in I have to run in around 5 minutes or so, but we can have another call on that. It's no problem.
Yeah.
If you want, if it maybe makes more sense, I can give you a list.
Send me the docs. Send me all the technical information, sourcing, parts, designs, iterations. Give me all of that. I want to take a look at it. I would say let's try. The way we're structuring our program is in 2-month sessions of rapid prototyping in quarters for the apprenticeship itself. So let's talk about planning an MRI, open source MRI sprint. We can get all the materials. Let's do another prototype or full build. Invite the proper people. So I would like to see 100 people, out of whom maybe a dozen or two are subject matter experts. The rest of them are developers and all other aspects, and open up to the remote community of about 1,000 people. So let's test this method on this super exciting thing. We'll be able to do it. It'll cost a bit. The cost will be probably a couple of $100K. Let's do it. We can.
This would be really cool. Because this is nothing you can do in a short time. But if you have
100 people and some machines. Let's get the CNC machines in there. Let's get the electronics fab in there. What else do we need? We'll get
what's the typical time frame you're targeting? Because I know some of the
2 weeks.
Yeah, this is definitely doable. This is definitely doable because I know there were some hackathons trying to do it in a week, and that's just not possible. And also, people don't understand most of it. So
it starts with crash courses, and that's an exciting part. Work on that.
No, that would be actually cool. So we will have also. We need to talk again because there are a lot of things. This could develop into, because there's also, there's a huge need, for example, to make good educational content around it. We cannot keep up with the documentation. To simplify that. Next year we will be on the biggest MR conference in South Africa, actually, which is pretty cool. And there's a local group also building one of these systems, so we want to get it to run, that they can showcase it at the conference. And before, we will do some satellite events and so on. So there are a lot of interesting groups and people that would really actually need benefits that could be then involved. And interestingly, that was a little bit angering me, to be honest, because the Gates Foundation, they support such a project, but with the Hyperfine system, so with the proprietary system, and then they're also selling it like this will give accessibility to MR in Africa.
And they didn't want to talk to you.
And it's a pity that they don't follow. That they don't think the whole thing through. Having an open source approach would be way more effective, no? So but they will be also next year. So we are talking to them at the moment. So maybe there is a way of Anyway, I think
let's
there's
see.
still
Yeah.
lot to talk about. Yeah.
All
But
right.
would
That's
be
great.
nice if you see some if you have some ideas and I think the all the progress I'm really surprised how fast we got there, to be honest. It's pretty cool. I'm really excited what will happen in like 5 years from now.
Oh, it's
Um,
well, the
it will
open
be
source revolution is coming. So the
yes,
latest
yes,
deal is 2028. All the 50 machines are going to be done. So we think we
nice,
have a
nice.
method of doing that. With the revenue model on the
Yeah,
homes, we can fund
yeah,
all the remaining development. I think this what
nice.
we talk about with you
Yeah,
that helps us market our stuff. It helps us get into other things like the machine center. We got to finally get
yeah,
that out, and other technologies, including,
mm,
well, I mean, the open source power supply, which in principle could be an amplifier, and all of that is part of the
yeah,
GVCS too. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
but yeah, yeah. So after September, so November,
yeah.
we'll know how our first session of our program went, and at that point, I'll be able to start talking about dates for setting up this event.
Awesome,
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, let's do it.
Let's keep in touch and yeah, happy Marcin. I mean, we're still on the same wave,
Yeah,
and I still haven't lost. I mean, I will not lose my open source idea. The only
right.
question is if sometimes you do little compromises to get to the goal, but
No, that's not
I
needed
will
yet.
not. You know,
And the
if
radical,
it's not
yeah,
needed, if we find a way, let's do it. No, that's yeah, great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We got it. We got it. Okay, great to talk to
Okay.
you. Beautiful work. I mean, thanks for doing it, and the world will thank you
Thank you. Thank you,
manifold
Marcin.
in the future.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm also a fan of yours, so thanks a lot.
yeah. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
Yep.